I don't think I ever really believed everything.
And I realized that quite a few of the things didn't hold water.
The actual religions were man-made from wherever.
God? Who's God? What's God?
I think that skepticism really is the first step.
Scientific zest and zeal for the real world.
That was it. I was an atheist from then on.
When the words under God came, I just didn't say anything, and the teacher noticed it.
Hi, my name is Susan.
And my name is Rad.
And we are members of the New York City Atheists. And today we are here to interview Shirley and how she became a walker on the road to atheism. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, tell us about your history and where were you born?
I was born in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were Holocaust survivors, and they were waiting to come to the United States. So I was only 3 months old when we arrived. So basically, I'm American.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And you grew up?
In the Bronx. But I've lived in Brooklyn for the last 35 years.
A difference between Bronx and Brooklyn?
No, I don't really find much difference, at least not Bronx as it was when I grew up.
Right.
Was your family religious?
No, my parents were atheists, and so I was basically born into an atheist environment and never had any idea that people believed in God until I came across some. Mm-hmm. So there was never any epiphany or realization. When I saw that there were people who believed in God, I just couldn't fathom it. It didn't make any sense to me.
When you were a little girl in December walking down the streets and all this stuff about Christmas, I mean, did you ask your parents about what the heck was going on? Or
I asked them for a Christmas tree. I loved Christmas. It was a lot of fun. I never really got into the, religious aspect of it. In terms of birth of Christ, Christmas was just wonderful music and lovely decorations and gifts, and so. And my parents allowed me to enjoy my neighbor's Christmas. Mm-hmm. My parents were, however, very into Jewish culture, and I was sent to, unlike my husband, who was sent to a religious Jewish school, my parents found a way for me to get a totally secular Jewish education. And so I learned the languages, the history, the music, the literature, without imbibing anything about. I mean, I learned about the Bible and the Tanakh and
Mm-hmm.
how important it was to Jewish history, but not to take it as to believe what was in it.
As gospel, as we
Right.
say.
yes,
Right.
seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up in school, you never had any problems?
No, when the first time I had an occasion or an incident regarding religion was in junior high school. When we said the Pledge of Allegiance, I stood up. I said, but when the words "under God" came, I just didn't say anything, and the teacher noticed it, and she sent me to the principal.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something.
And what did he do?
I don't think anything really happened because that was the end of it. I stood my ground and I said, I don't believe in it, and so I'm not going to say it. And
That's right. And you have a constitution.
You're a lot
that says
smarter
you
than
have
I
a right.
was.
You have a right to believe or not to believe, so that's a good thing. You stayed your ground. Mm-hmm. That's good.
But I have to say that it was easy because I was growing up in New York City, and had I been raised in some Midwestern
Kansas,
Bible Belt,
Yes.
it would have been much harder, I'm sure.
Yes, we've all been very fortunate.
Did your friends there, were they religious, or did you have friends that were
No,
agnostic?
I grew up in a milieu where I really didn't meet religious people, except for my a cousin whose mother, they were living in a pretty rough part of the Bronx, mm-hmm. and she was afraid to send him to the public school. She sent him to a yeshiva, and he became very religious. She had to cater to all the rituals as a result of that.
Did you have to keep a kosher household?
Yeah, and not turn on the lights and so forth.
I made a lot of money that.
So it just goes to show how
Is he still?
Yes, he's still, and his children are
Right.
even more fanatic than he is.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah,
That's
It just-
unfortunate.
yeah.
Unfortunate. Your life and your job and your friends, anything unusual happen where religion was the obstacle or benefit to you?
I once was romantically involved with an Orthodox Jew, and in order to marry him, I would have had to follow the ritual, and I contemplated doing that for a while, but I never. It would have just been to perform the rituals, but I knew I would never believe in it. It was just to make his family happy.
Shave your hair. Yeah.
No, it was
Acidic.
he wasn't that wasn't that extreme, but it came to a quick end when his mother,
Who was very
decided that she wasn't just religious; she was, illiterate. So
Oh, it's doubly sad.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any key milestones in your life that, other than the possibly getting married and then engaged?
Well, that in what way that religion would impinge on it?
Well, it could be a job, for example, where you spoke to a number of people on your job, and in addition to that, maybe the boss might have been religious one way or the other.
I was fortunate; I didn't have such experiences. But as I said, it's New York.
Yes,
Okay,
we
and
are.
in college or in your life in higher education, did you?
Well, I mean, I've met people who are religious, and I even know some people who I grew up with who later became slightly religious. I remember I visited a friend who moved to the suburb of New Jersey, and we went to the synagogue that night. And I said, "What happened to you? I thought you didn't believe any of this." And he said, "There's nothing else around here." So religion, in addition to comforting people about the facts of death,
Keeps them occupied.
it provides community and ritual is fun. So I can see that it when you don't live in a city like New York where you have so many alternatives to that to fulfill those needs. Belonging to a congregation. I mean, I belong to a congregation, as a matter of fact, and part of the reason I do is it provides me with a community of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
I could never join a congregation, either Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox, where they actually worshipped a supernatural being. I mean, that's not like-minded, but I did find a community of like-minded people with whom I share many values, and that's nice. And we celebrate the holidays, and so.
Do you have children?
No.
Okay, so don't have to worry about them.
Right. And actually, in my congregation, we just had a workshop on raising children humanistically.
Mm-hmm.
Any points
That's
to that?
Well, I don't have children,
Oh,
so I
you
didn't go.
attend, yeah.
Right. But it must have been interesting for the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are, I think, some benefits with the Jewish culture, which is very, very interesting and very good. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, so I went to probably about close to 19 or 20 bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. Seder's galore. The culture in that is such that you learn a number of things, and especially the philanthropic aspect of it. Donate, to be involved, help others that do need that help. I think those rules are very good. I want to say rules, but cultural aspects and things that are helping others in life. The Catholics and the Christians, they have their own way of doing that and helping others as well. But it can also be done without having religion involved.
Exactly. You don't need to believe.
You don't have to believe in a super being or go through the religious ceremonies in order to help your fellow brother. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, I recall reading, the Seder book. I forget what it's called.
Haggadah.
Haggadah. And they would, in the ones I went to, they used the phrase, Lord God of the universe. And I'm going, do these people who wrote this actually realize how big the universe actually is? That it's billions of light years across and 13 point something billions of years old.
Actually, in the Neolithic age, the Bronze Age, right, where you have a lot of the biblical sayings and whatnot, people believe that the stars were embers of coal in the sky. It's very interesting, and that it was a dome shape, and that we had that it had 4 actual corners, and how the sun ever quickly went around to the other side and came back again. It was very interesting.
Well, that was the age of ignorance.
It certainly was. They didn't know
now we're in the
rotation of that, but
space age.
very much so.
And
But-
still people that
Yes.
have certain
Cling to it.
psychological needs that that are, they find it comforting to think there's, Big Daddy in the sky.
Yeah. Well, I often say religion is the poor man's psychiatrist. And if it helps him or her in certain ways, that could be of a benefit. But then again, you become dependent on that type of thing, and you wind up doing things that are very unusual. Getting candles. So, for example, the Hispanic and Black area, they'll get candles. And one is a candle for love, another candle for wealth, another candle for health, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that type of thing is, there are many other things that they'll do and go out of their way because they are told to do this. This is part of the cultural event, and so they do. And it could be detrimental to their health as well.
Yes,
there are many
relying on the
different things.
candle and not a doctor.
Exactly. There's a group that's in, as I mentioned before, that's in the state of Oregon, where they actually got around and held hands, and the kid was very sick. Instead of bringing him to the doctor, she wound up dying.
Yeah, that happens several
and
times.
All it was simply needed insulin. And that's not only that, you have other different things that can affect, excuse my voice, but those are one of the problems that you have with that.
So your husband mentioned you are a member of New York City Atheist.
Yes.
How long and what actually brought you to join?
I've been a member for many years, I think. I don't remember when I joined, but it's been at least 10 years. And what moved me to join is that we have to protect the rights of people who are secular, and we need freedom from religion as well as
Definitely.
freedom for religion. And the only way to do that is to organize.
Yes.
And so I'm supporting that cause. I also enjoy coming to the meetings.
That's one thing about meetings, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this, and the meetings are very good. You're going to get a chance to meet people who are philosophers, people who are scientists in different disciplines.
And even
everyday
people who
life.
are ex-clergy.
And ex-clergy, right. A lot of different people that you meet at the meetings, and they're very good. With monthly meetings that we have, and every second Sunday we have a brunch, and that's a very good, in fact, you listen to a lot of things and some film and other
We have a movie book club.
we have a movie book club, and a lot of other different organizations come. It's a very, very effective way. I'm sure that you know about that. You've been to a number of our meetings. Well, that's...
No, wait a minute. I have a silly question.
Yeah.
You're involved in a lot of women's causes. Could you talk about that and the impact of religion and why you're getting involved?
Well, I see religion has mostly had a very negative impact on women in most, in Christianity and
All three Abrahamic
Islam and
religions.
even in Judaism. Women are in a very low position and are abused. Religion has been very bad for women. I can't think of a religion in the world that has really helped women. So, I mean, it's a creation of human beings, and men, like all human beings, like to be, like to dominate when they can get away with it, and that's so.
And having an imaginary figure being the voice of authority and giving them, actual power, that reinforces it, unfortunately. And these poor women are brainwashed into accepting it.
Right.
Well, they are, and culture-wise, that happens. Look at that girl, for example, who wanted to get an education in Afghanistan.
Oh yes, Malala.
And yet you're back to the Stone Age type people with their attitudes who wanted to shoot and kill her. And yet she winds up winning the Nobel
I'm not
Peace
saying that there
Prize.
was sexism would not exist if there was no religion. It would still exist, but that they use religion as
It gives the men
gives them-
authority.
right?
Authority, right.
Gives them legitimacy.
Yes.
God says so.
Yes. You can't argue with him.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate you coming down here and telling us your viewpoints and what you are doing. Do you have any plans for the future as far as being with our organization or attending some of the national meetings that we go to every now and then?
I intend to continue coming to the meetings and supporting the organization.
We appreciate
It's very
that.
important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, today I'm going to talk about the connection between religion and politics, and perhaps offer some thoughts about how we can sort through some of the often bitter arguments that we've been seeing over the last several years. But it won't have an impact unless we tackle head-on the mutual suspicion that sometimes exists between religious America and secular America. I want to give you an example. During the 2004 U.S. Senate election, in the general election, I ran against a gentleman named Alan Keyes. And my opponent, Alan Keyes, was well-versed in the Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson style of rhetoric, a rhetoric that sometimes labels progressives as both immoral and godless. And in fact, towards the end of the campaign, Mr. Keyes announced to the people of Illinois that, quote, Jesus Christ would not vote for Barack Obama. He claimed to know certain truths. Obama says he's a Christian, he was saying, and yet he supports a lifestyle that the Bible calls an abomination. Mr. Obama says he's a Christian, but he supports the destruction of innocent and sacred life. So Mr. Keyes would say. And what would my supporters have me say? How might I respond? I said that we live in a pluralistic society, that I can't impose my own religious views on another. I informed Mr. Keyes that I was running to be the United States Senator of Illinois and not the Minister of Illinois. And my dilemma is by no means unique. In a way, it reflects the broader debate that we've been having in this country for the last 30 years over the role of religion in politics. For some time now, there's been plenty of talk among pundits and pollsters that the political divide in this country has fallen sharply along religious lines. In fact, the single biggest gap in party affiliation among white Americans today is not between men and women, or those who reside in so-called red states and those who reside in blue, but between those who attend church regularly and those who don't. Conservative leaders have been all too happy to exploit this gap, consistently reminding evangelical Christians that Democrats disrespect their values and dislike their church. At best, we may try to avoid the conversation about religion altogether, fearful of offending anyone and claiming that regardless of our personal beliefs, constitutional principles tie our hands. I think it's time that we join a serious debate about how to reconcile faith with our modern pluralistic society. Substantially more people in America believe in angels than they do in evolution. You know, I was not raised in a particularly religious household, as undoubtedly many in the audience were. My father, who returned to Kenya when I was just 2, was born a Muslim, but as an adult was an atheist. My mother, whose parents were non-practicing Baptists and Methodists, but she grew up with a healthy skepticism of organized religion herself, partly because of the hypocrisy that she had seen in the church early in her life. And because she grew up with a healthy skepticism of organized religion, so did I. Those with the most insular views of faith are those who cynically use religion to justify partisan ends. In other words, if we don't reach out to evangelical Christians and other religious Americans and tell them what we stand for, then Jerry Falwell's and Pat Robertson's and Alan Keyes's views will continue to hold sway. I believe in vigorous enforcement of our non-discrimination laws. I think we should put more of our tax dollars into educating our poor girls and boys. I also think that we should give them information about contraception that can prevent unwanted pregnancies and lower abortion rates and help assure that every child is loved and cherished. In fact, because I do not believe that religious people have a monopoly on morality, I would rather have someone who is grounded in morality and ethics and who is also secular affirm their morality and their ethics and their values without pretending that there's something they're not. They don't need to do that. None of us need to do that. I want to talk a little bit about what conservative leaders also need to do. Some truths they need to acknowledge. For one thing, they need to understand the critical role of the separation of church and state in not just preserving our democracy, but the robustness of our religious practice. And moreover, given the increasing diversity of America's populations, the dangers of sectarianism are greater than ever. Whatever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation, at least not just. We are also a Jewish nation, a Muslim nation, and a Buddhist nation, and a Hindu nation, and a nation of non-believers. And even if we did have only Christians in our midst, if we expelled every non-Christian from the United States of America, whose Christianity would we teach in the schools? Would it be James Dobson's or Al Sharpton's? Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith? Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application? Which brings me to my second point. Democracy demands that the religiously motivated translate their concerns into universal rather than religion-specific values. What do I mean by this? It requires that their proposals be subject to argument and amenable to reason. Now, I may be opposed to abortion for religious reasons, to take one example, but if I seek to pass a law banning the practice, I can't simply point to the teachings of my church or evoke God's will. I have to explain why abortion violates some principle that is accessible to people of all faiths, including those with no faith at all. Now, this is going to be difficult for some who believe in the inerrancy of the Bible, as many evangelicals do. But in a pluralistic society, we have no choice. Politics depends on our ability to persuade each other of common aims based on a common reality. It involves compromise, the art of what's possible. And at some fundamental level, religion doesn't allow for compromise. It's the art of the impossible. If God's spoken, then followers are expected to live up to God's edicts, regardless of the consequences. Now, to base one's own life on such uncompromising commitments may be sublime, but to base our policy making on such commitments would be a dangerous thing. And if you doubt that, let me just give you an example. We all know the story of Abraham and Isaac. Abraham's ordered by God to offer up his only son. Without argument, he takes Isaac up to the mountaintop, he binds them to the altar, raises his knife, prepares to act as God commanded. But it's fair to say that if any of us leaving this church saw Abraham on the roof of a building raising his knife, we would, at the very least, call the police and expect the Department of Children and Family Services to take Isaac away from Abraham. And so the best we can do is act in accordance with those things that we all see and that we all hear, be it common laws or basic reason. Even those who claim the Bible's inerrancy make distinctions between scriptural edicts and may be modified to accommodate modern life. And the American people intuitively understand this, which is why the majority of Catholics practice birth control, and some of those opposed to gay marriage nevertheless are opposed to a constitutional amendment to ban it. So we have some work to do here, but I am hopeful that we can bridge the gap that exists and overcome the prejudices that all of us to one degree or another bring. No matter how religious they may be or may not be, people are tired of seeing faith used as a tool of attack. They don't want faith used to belittle or to divide. They are tired of people who deliver more screed than sermon. So let me end with just one other interaction I had during my campaign. A few days after I won the Democratic nomination in my U.S. Senate race, I get this email from a doctor at the University of Chicago Medical School, and the email said the following, quote, "Congratulations on your overwhelming and inspiring primary win. I was happy to vote for you, and I will tell you that I am seriously considering voting for you in the general election. I write to express my concerns that may, in the end, prevent me from supporting you." The doctor then described himself as a Christian. His faith led him to a strong opposition to abortion and gay marriage. The reason the doctor was considering not voting for me was not simply the fact that I was